trembles to minister a potion unto mine ear, that which trembled to receive thyself. There we go. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to BSidesLV 2018.
The biggest and best B-Sides Las Vegas ever.
I'm Winter, this is Oz. Next year will be better, last year was better, but what we can tell you is that it has been 10 years since the house that Jack built first opened its doors to a handful of talks. And this year, BSidesLV will host 130 talks and training for over 200 hours of combined educational programming. And that's all given away for free, folks. That's beautiful. Because of the dedication and support of the sponsors and people like you. The sponsors this year that we have to thank are...
Rapid7, top of the list. We got Amazon here this year. OAuth, Talos, Semly, don't know if I said that right. Endgame, HackerOne, Humio, ITPro.tv. We got Upticks, and we got VirusTotal, and last but not least, Wallarm.
So thank you very much to sponsors.
Check out this crazy wall of support up here. We got a couple of schedule changes, just so everyone's aware. Some time changes. So Hillbilly Story Time with Adam is going to be 11 to 12 Wednesday, not today, not in the Copa at 11 today. Ground floor in Copa, the first talk today will be at 11:30. We're going to sort of tighten these keynotes up, get them done early. A Scanner Darkly, which is a blue team technique to break discovery with Matthew Eversion. So that's going to be now at 11:30 today, and then from CTF to CVE, unfortunately, has been canceled.
So that would have been the talk directly before that if you were looking for it.
Oh. Mic check. Mic check. The reply is mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Hello. Thank you. Thank you for giving me your attention, the whole entire room. Hello. Yeah, but I can still hear you too, and I shouldn't be able to hear you. I should only hear me. Hello, mic check. All right, if I call mic check, that means I'm asking the whole entire room to be quiet and do nothing but listen to the voice who's calling mic check. Mic check. I'm still hearing voices that aren't mine. Mic check. Thank you. If you wish to talk, please go out into the hallway track. This is not for conversation. This is for paying attention to what's going on the stage. And that includes our lovely, lovely sponsors. We'll not be having conversation for the next hour or so.
Beer? Bless you.
That bacon went down the wrong pipe.
Quotable quotes at B-Sides Las Vegas.
Thank you all. Hey,
Yeah.
Voice. Oh, no. Yeah, actually, I'll take one of those for a minute. Thanks. I like being able to speak. Yeah, I'm going to lose my voice before DEF CON. Thank you for your attention. If you wish to continue your conversations, please do so elsewhere. But otherwise, welcome to your attention to the stage.
Cheers. Thank you, Banshee. Everyone, Banshee! So having said that, there's just a couple of other little pieces of business. If you've been here in years previously, you may have known that the raffles went on really, really long during the ending ceremonies, that we were picking numbers and nobody was there. So it works a little bit differently this year. In your bags that you received at registration, there's probably a couple of tickets. You'll notice that they weren't separated. We're going to do a raffle draw during the happy hour today, the happy hour tomorrow, and tomorrow before or during the closing ceremonies. So the idea is go past the raffle and silent auction portion of the table over here once we get it set up, and then you'll be able to say that, oh, if I want to bid on this stuff, or if I want to put my raffle ticket in to win this, I know that it's being drawn at this happy hour, so that we're only pulling tickets from the people that are there. So we'll be collecting the tickets at that point in time. If that didn't make any sense because it's early and it was a late night, then you can meet us over at the silent auction table and we'll discuss that with you later. Beyond that, we've got public grounds.
Yeah, and just a quick note on we've got all the supporters we mentioned before for B-Sides. This is an amazing conference, and the price is totally phenomenal, right? So we really depend on the support of everyone that comes here as well. So please go over, buy a raffle ticket or 10, support the silent auction, buy a T-shirt, because this is really a community-driven event that we have here.
Yeah.
We have a new thing this year that we're just announcing now, the public ground. So for years we've been building bridges into public policy. They're here in public grounds and dying to meet you. So your opportunity to engage and maybe hack our futures. It's going to be over in Platinum, sponsored by Hewlett Foundation and organized by I Am the Cavalry. And this is designed to be a safe space for security researchers and public policy people to build bridges together, understand where each other's coming from, and engage some of our teammates and some of the ambassadors from the other side. Office hours will be held by congressional staffers, hackers and lawyers, Homeland Security, the FDA, think tankers, Mozilla, and other ones as well. Very excited to meet you. They're going to have some topics like, should companies be liable for software vulnerabilities when people get harmed? Very interesting and unsolved question there. How is coordinated vulnerability disclosure understood in Congress, or is it understood at all? Let's find out from some of our congressional representative and staffers about that. And should companies have immunity if they do the right thing and if they respond to coordinated disclosure in a timely and responsible manner? So that, I think, is really worth checking out for anyone interested in those policy questions.
That's a brand new thing this year, and we really want to thank the Hewlett Foundation for putting this together for us. Thank you so much. So just the final things, we're about to get going here. Quick notes that there's a few evening events. There's a QueerCon mixer at 8 till midnight tonight at the Tuscany Pool. And also at 9:30, there's the new Hacker Pyramid, which will be here in this room. And tomorrow night, of course, is the big pool party. But basically, I don't know if you guys know Zaz or if you've met Winter or anything like that. We're just a couple of people from different countries who have decided that we would come out down to the States and help out host this conference, because things here right now, man.
Yeah, it's just an interesting situation, and I feel like the American MC industry seems to be struggling. And we're having to import these.
No, I'm sorry. We've just been told that by presidential decree, there's now a tariff on foreign MCs. We have to reduce our. We're done. We can't intro ourselves. We're out of time.
We had a bunch more here, but we've been 25% of our MCing has been cut right now, so we're just going to have to.
Yeah. I better get off stage before DHS gets here. All right. Keynote intro.
Yeah, so let's move on quickly. I'm super excited to introduce this first keynote speaker today, because he's going to be speaking about something that has fascinated me for a very long time. So our first keynote speaker is retired Special Agent Jim Christie. Some quick biographical information. He was most recently, until 2013, the Director of Futures Exploration, which explored strategic relationships between the U.S. government and the private sector and academia, so stuff that a lot of us are really interested in. Before that, from 03 to 06, he was the Director of the Defense Cybercrime Institute. From 2001 to 2003, the Director of Operations of the Defense Computer Forensics Lab. And from 89 to 96, Chief of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations Computer Crime Investigations Unit. So to translate that into our language, he's a badass. And that was recognized by Hollywood. He actually wrote the infrastructure attacks for the movie Live Free or Die Hard. So he's going to be talking today about the D.B. Cooper cold case. He was brought on to work on that cold case, brought out of retirement in 2016, which is just an absolutely fascinating case. If you're not familiar with it, you'll be very, very interested. If you're familiar with it, he's got some new information to talk to us here. Sorry. So once again, please don't talk to the
25% less.
And welcome Jim Christie.
All right, good morning. How y'all doing? So I'm a former government guy, so this is our agenda, okay? So common operating picture. So what does cyber mean anyway, right? I got to tell you, working for the Department of Defense for 42 years, 43 years, when cyber first came out, there was much debate and probably 27 different definitions flying around depending on the service or the organization. One of the jobs I had, I got detailed to Senator Nunn on the Permanent Subcommittee for Investigations back in 1996. And we held investigations and hearings on cyber threat to national security. And one of our first witnesses was John Deutsch when he was director of the CIA at the time. And my job as a staffer was to write all the questions for the senator, what the possible answers were, and what the follow-up question was so that the senator would look like he knew what the hell he was talking about, right? And being a senator and being a lawyer, you never ask questions you already don't know the answers to, right? Well, in the middle of John Deutsch's testimony, he asked John Deutsch, so what was, I'm going the wrong direction here. So what does cyber mean anyway? And John Deutsch's face went pale. I mean, this is 1996. He's a senior guy. He doesn't know what the hell cyber means. And so he pauses. He says, may I have a moment? And he turns to his strap hangers in the back, and they have a huddle for about 30 seconds. And he comes back and says, sorry, Senator, I'll have to get back to you on the answer. So the very next day, he sends this letter to Senator Nunn, so I'll read it for you. It says, Dear Senator Nunn, during yesterday's hearings on foreign information warfare capability, you asked a rather indelicate question. What does cyber mean anyway? I must admit that your query caused a great deal of discomfort here. While everyone had used the term, no one had heretofore felt any need to know precisely what the hell it meant. Yeah, I put hell in, he didn't say that. In light of my promise to keep Congress fully and currently informed, I pressed for an answer. Central Intelligence Agency's, CIA's research revealed that the term cybernetics was coined by the father of cybernetics, Norbert Wiener, in 1948. In Mr. Weiner's words, we have decided to call the entire field of control and communication theory, whether in a machine or an animal, by the name cybernetics, which we formed from the Greek cybernetes, or steersman. That's enlightening. Department of State concurred with CIA's findings, but wished to point out that the Greek cybernetes is related to the Latin gubernator, meaning steersman or governor. The Defense Intelligence Agency, you remember Flynn, National Security Advisor, right? He ran DIA. The Defense Intelligence Agency is not yet ready to make a judgment and is exploring the possibility that cyber may come from the Greek cybistidator or diver, from which we also derive the word cybistidator, or a genus of large diving beetles. I hope this clears up any confusion. So now y'all know what the hell cyber means, right? So as a criminal investigator, we look at motives. When you're trying to solve a case. And they run the gamut from, sex, politics, activism, ego, hate, you name it. Anything can possibly be the motive. And every tool known to man so far to make life easier, more efficient, more effective, somebody has turned that tool around to make it, holy shit, what's going on here? Every tool has turned around to become a weapon. So it shouldn't, a rock, a hammer, a golf club, pots and pans, you name it, turned into a weapon. So we shouldn't be surprised when computers turn into weapons. And weapons can play three roles in a crime. They can be the victim of a crime, a system that's hacked, for instance. A witness in a crime could just be an innocent bypassing system, that the hacker went through, or it could be the target, the subject of the crime, and be the victim. So, tools of the trade today, you need reliable communication, whether you're an executive, spy, terrorist, and some say executives are spies or terrorists. So reliable communication, your documentation plans, partners, contact information, you need access to all this stuff. So what better place to use, things to use but the web, smartphones, laptops, tablets, and they do. I think that defending against a cyber attack is the opposite of defending against a nuclear attack. To defend against a nuclear attack, we know the sumbitches who have nukes, right? Right? We spend a lot of time in Intel knowing who's got them. And we surveil them. And we have great platforms to surveil these guys with nukes. So if somebody was to launch an attack, within a fraction of a second, we would know that there was a launch. We'd probably know they're prepping for it, know when it was launched, and within a few seconds, the trajectory and possible targets of that attack. And in the meantime, we're going to nuke them until they glow. Pretty significant deterrence. To defend against a cyber attack, you can't surveil everybody because anybody can launch a cyber attack. So you have to sit back and wait for the attack to occur and then work backwards for attribution. Much more difficult. And what makes it even more difficult is in the US, the difference between the responsibilities and authorities of the intel community and law enforcement community. So if the attacks are occurring in the United States, the intelligence community can't play. Only law enforcement can play. So hopefully the law enforcement guys will communicate and coordinate with the intel guys, but that's not a given. Okay, we're locked up here. So, there's a difference between law enforcement and the intel community. And we now have a cyber attack.
That's not how that should work.
No pressure.
None whatsoever.
Y'all are clapping, but it ain't flipping moving. not moving. It's called a premature accolade.
Indeed. It's still loading. When in doubt, just reboot does not fit here. It's still loading.
Reboot Office 365.
Live demo.
What's on that slide?
Don't go far. All right, so I'll skip a lot of slides. How's that? Holy shit. Well, I'm never buying a Chromebook, let me tell you. Holy shit. Okay, speed counts, right? Oh my God. Jurisdiction. There are over, well, I don't even care about that shit. So attribution is the holy grail for a cyber attack. Got to get some bitch's fingers on the keyboard. All right, so we're skipping through. How many of you know about the Hanover hacker case? Red? Okay, that was my case. Okay, so Cliff's an old buddy. Marsworm, everybody know the Marsworm? All right, you know, I worked that case, and his father was even on my Meet the Fed panel one year. You know, he says, "You look familiar." I said, "Yeah, because I worked your son's case." You guys don't want to talk about the elections and all that bullshit. So we'll just keep on going. So what I would like to talk about is the law enforcement and the intelligence community. The intelligence community has done a tremendous disservice to us in America. The only thing that counts to the intelligence community is offense. And they don't share any information with law enforcement or the private sector because they want to use it offensively. And I think that it's far more important to do defense when it comes to cyber than offense. Okay, so. Yeah, they classify everything. It's sad. So. So I think digital forensics, with the proliferation of digital devices, digital forensics is the key. It answers, you know, DNA, we've been using DNA in criminal cases since about 1986, and it can answer the who question. But digital forensics can answer all the traditional who, what, where, when, why, and how question. But we just can't do it in 10 minutes like they do on TV. All right, come on, move. So there are different disciplines within the intelligence community. You have SIGINT, HUMINT, all the different ints. I think that we should have created a thing I call digital forensics intelligence. And the reason might come up in a minute or so. Holy shit. That'll make it go faster? So if you look at the Venn diagram, 3 different disciplines. The national security, that's the Department of Defense, the intelligence community, public safety, that's your law enforcement community, and then the economic sector, private sector, okay? Where they all overlap is what I call digital forensics intelligence. So, now it goes to. What a piece of shit this is. Okay. Anyway. Screw digital forensics. Talk about a case I had back in 1991. Dependent wife of an Air Force member. She was found in the front seat of her pickup truck, and she had been stabbed 42 times. Husband was a suspect but had an alibi, and he was on base at the time of the murder. She was murdered off base. So about 3 days later, the agents went to interview him. This was in the Philippines. and they went to interview him as a witness, not as a subject. And so they went to his office. They walked into his office, and they started talking to him. And all of a sudden, he jumped up from the desk, reaches down into a box next to his desk, pulls out a 5 1/4-inch floppy disk and a pair of pinking shears, and he began mutilating the diskettes. So the agents said that they couldn't jump him right away because he was fending them off with the scissors. But once they got the scissors away, then he started picking up the pieces, and they called me in D.C. and said, hey, obviously there's something on these disks that he doesn't want us to see, because they're detectives. So they said, we're sending them to you. You need to get all that. You need to find out what's on the disk. So while they were in transit, I'm talking to all the different law enforcement agencies. Nobody had a tool or a technique to recover the data. I went to the private sector. They didn't have a tool or a technique. I finally went to the intelligence community. NSA was up there for a while, and they said, well, we've got theories on that, but we've never tested a theory, so it'll take a long time. Meanwhile, our boy's been arrested for homicide, and we have a speedy trial issue. So I went to my buddies over at CIA, and they said, yeah, we can get the data for you. I said, cool. So they said, but we can't tell you how we did it. And I said, well, what the hell good is that? And they said, well, you can, we'll give you the data, but we're not going to divulge a classified technique in open court. It's a criminal court. It's a murder. I said, okay, well, you give me the data and I'll figure that out. So I figured if he gives me the data, the bad guy knows what's on there. If I show it to him, maybe we can get a confession and trick him into confessing. So that was the plan. So they had my disk for about 2 weeks, and they called and said, okay, you can come get your damn disks. I said, what does that mean? They said, well, we can't talk about it on the phone. I said, okay. So my deputy, Ed Cutchins, and I, we drive around the Beltway over to CIA headquarters, and we pick up our disk. I said, so what's going on? Well, we can't get the information off the disk. I said, why did you just tell me that? Well, we don't want the bad guys to know they might be listening, that we can't get that data. I said, oh, okay, got it, thank you. So we grabbed our disk, we start back around the Beltway, and Ed says to me, okay, you let all the big boys have a shot, you're going to let me have a shot. I said, well, what are you going to do? He says, hell, I'm going to scotch tape them back together. I said, you can't scotch tape discs back together, because in the old floppy disks, the head rides right on the Mylar, right? So if it hits a piece of tape, it's going to rip the read-write heads off. He says, well, shit, we don't know if we don't try. So we get back to the office, we grab a disk, throw some data on it, we cut it in quarters, tape it on one side, throw it back in the jacket, and then he whips out my laptop with my external 5 1/4 drive. And he says, we're going to read it. I said, you're going to rip my read-write heads off. Won't know if we don't try. So turned it on, and you could hear it crunching, and then all of a sudden you could hear the heads flying around on the inside of the chassis. Won't go into what I said at that point. So we pulled it out, and when we pulled it out, on the top where the splice was, that was still nice and smooth. On the backside where the tape was frayed. Tape is what ripped the read-write heads off. So we started brainstorming, and I said, well, what if we take another blank diskette and we sandwich the tape between the two? So we tried that. So we got a disk, put some data on it, cut it in quarters, taped it on one side, covered it up with another blank diskette, put them back in the jacket, and we'd gone up to the small computer tech center, got a stack of disk drives because we figured we were going to rip the shit out of them. And we turned it on, and we were able to do physical reads of the data off the top diskette. Well, cool. Now we have to flip it over and, do the backside. So we did that. We were able to get the data from the backside. So now we had a technique. The guy had crumpled the disks up. So the real evidence pieces, we had to figure out how to deal with them. So we had to iron them. So we tried irons. We tried, we tried a bunch of techniques. Didn't work. So finally, we took a soldering iron, put it on a rheostat so we could adjust the temperature, took a piece of brushed aluminum tubing, slid it over the heating element, and then we rolled it. So if you need to do this at home, 112 degrees works great, okay? And we'd take the creases out. Also, remember the pieces. We actually had 2 diskettes when we started putting them together like a jigsaw puzzle. We actually had 2 diskettes and 23 pieces, and we only had 2/3 of each diskette. I guess it was kind of an afterthought to get them all, you know. And so we had to piece these together, and some of them didn't have an outer edge or an inner hub, so we didn't know how to orient them. So I found this stuff called Magnecy. It's a real fine ferrous powder suspended in an alcohol-based solution. You shake it up, throw it on magnetic media. The alcohol evaporates, and the particles line up with the tracks and sectors, and you can actually see your data. So we used that, and you could actually see the data, and we could orient them, tape them in place, and then with a little alcohol, brush off the ferrous powder. So using that technique, we were able to recover anywhere from 85 to 95% of the data off each and every piece. What we found on the disk was that our boy, his wife, had actually divorced him and left him and moved back to the United States. We found the love letters that he was sending to his ex-wife, saying how much he loved her, wanting her to come back and remarry him. And then we also found the letters that he was sending to his Filipino girlfriend, saying how he hated his ex-wife, how he loved her, and oh, by the way, will you hire a hitman for me? The local police interviewed the girlfriend, and on the 7th interview, I think she was waterboarded, that she finally confessed that she had 2 of her cousins and a third guy, and they split $105 and killed his wife. Once we got all that information, we presented it to him, and then he confessed, pled guilty, and was sentenced to life in prison. So it's even changed the fonts and the sizes. I mean, this is really great. Anyway, Forensics Files did an episode on it, called Sheer Luck, which I think is bullshit. Okay, now I want to talk about the cold case. So back in 2016, I was asked to join the D.B. Cooper cold case team. How many of you remember D.B. Cooper? Okay, he's an American legend, folk hero, right? Except he's really not. So there's been movies, there's been songs over the years. So D.B. Cooper was actually, his name was Dan Cooper. He purchased a ticket the day before Thanksgiving in 1971 from Portland to Seattle for $20. And you can see he actually filled it out, Dan Cooper. So the press nicknamed him D.B. Cooper by accident, so it was actually Dan Cooper. He hijacked a Northwest Orient Flight 305 on the day before Thanksgiving, and today it's still the only unsolved U.S. hijacking. He had a bomb on board. He showed it to the flight attendant, the stewardess at the time, and demanded $200,000 and 4 parachutes, 2 regular parachutes and 2 reserves. And then he let the passengers go once they landed in Seattle. Once the money came on board and the parachutes, he checked the parachutes. He let the passengers go, and a couple members of the crew kept about 4 of them and said, okay, we're going to fly to Mexico. And they said, well, we can't go that far. We have to refuel. So said, okay, we're going to refuel in Reno and then go on to Mexico. And somewhere along the way, they think in Washington State, they were flying a 727 that has a stairwell in the back, in the aft end of the aircraft. They felt the shaking. He was asking how to open the stairs. He opened the stairs and disappeared and never been heard from again. So, 7 years ago, Tom Colbert, who's our lead investigator, comprised a team of over 40 law enforcement professionals, polygraphers, criminologists, FBI agents, intel, a couple judges, handwriting experts, forensics experts, and they went on this probably a 5-year investigation. And it culminated with the History Channel airing a 4-hour episode in July of 2016. So you can catch the reruns. It comes on about 3 or 4 times a year. Well, the team believed at the time that they had identified who D.B. Cooper was. Suspect was Robert Rackstraw. He was 73 years old in 2016. Had an illustrious military career until it wasn't. FBI identified him as a suspect as being D.B. Cooper in 1978. He was kicked out of the Army for fraud in 1971. Actually, what he did was he had moved up the ranks in the Army to a first lieutenant, and he beat his wife multiple times. They investigated, and while they were investigating, they found out that he lied to get in the Army. He was actually a high school dropout. So they kicked him out. While he was in the Army, he was airborne jump school. He was a helicopter pilot, and you can see his military ID on the left and the D.B. Cooper picture on the left, and pretty similar. So he does resemble D.B. Cooper. Holy God. So he was an explosives expert, pilot, both fixed wing and helicopter. I can't even read it. I don't know how you guys are. Yeah, heavy smoker. He trained the Shah of Iran's helicopter pilots. He was acquitted of murdering his stepfather. Guy was a real nice guy. Felony convictions for check kiting and plane theft and illegal explosives, was sentenced to 2 years in prison and served a bit of jail time. In 1964, he enlisted in the Army, was in infantry jump school in 67, battered his wife at 68. She was going to divorce him, and then some of the seniors in the military went to his wife and convinced her not to do that because it would ruin his career, so she stayed with him. He did PSYOPs training in helicopter school in 68, deployed to Vietnam for 2 tours, 2 distinguished flying crosses and a Silver Star, and promoted to first lieutenant. And he did sport jumping with the Vietnamese. So besides jump school, he was actually a sport parachutist as well. So in 1971, he battered his wife. They ran the investigation. He was kicked out of the Army. He disappeared in June and just dropped off the map there. And the day before Thanksgiving, the 24th, is when the hijacking occurred. So in the investigation, we actually think we know where he was for those 3 months, and it's a whole bizarre, whole nother set of circumstances. It's really interesting. But while he was being arrested, while he was in jail and going to trial for the explosives and the fraud, he was asked by one of the media if he was D.B. Cooper. And he said, "No, I'm afraid of heights." So he said, "Well, you really could be D.B. Cooper. Are you D.B. Cooper?" He said, "It could have been. So he's never actually denied being D.B. Cooper. So kind of an interesting guy. So in July of 2016, when the History Channel aired their documentary, the FBI closed their case that had been open for 45 years that day. So kind of interesting. So case until that point had no cyber nexus. I wasn't involved in it at all. But there are several D.B. Cooper websites out there where people are trying to figure out, civilian sleuths trying to figure out who D.B. Cooper was. And our team was surveilling these websites. And 2 bloggers with no online history began posting and seemed to have information that only our team had that we hadn't made public in the documentary yet. Our team had over 110 at the time unique pieces of evidence that pointed to our guy Rackstraw. And the theory was that Rackstraw or somebody he was controlling were doing the blogging. So they came to me and asked me if I'd put a cold case team, cyber team together for them to see if we could identify who the bloggers were. So I joined the team. I put an undercover team together, 4 of us, from the Army, Navy, and Air Force with about 130 years investigative experience. And we created identities and joined these websites. And so we coordinated the scripts, what we were all going to say to each other, hoping that everybody else was watching and would enter into conversation, and we draw these bloggers in with us. And we created a document to help us surveil, and they took the bait, and he downloaded our document, and we set up monitoring. We could only reconcile it down to a zip code, so it didn't help us a whole lot. But while that was ongoing, we had this guy who was a 32-year-old male from Mississippi, contacted Colbert and said, hey, you know, I've catfished Robert Rackstraw, and he thinks I'm a 53-year-old nurse. He said, you know, are you interested? So Colbert said, hey, would you run this? I said, sure. So I started running this guy and trying to keep the two ops completely separate. So our boy had created a Facebook persona, Kelly, 52-year-old nurse from Mississippi, said her father had been stationed with Rackstraw and that she liked military men, even 73-year-old men, sent flattering messages, sent a friend request, and asked him if he was D.B. Cooper. After a month, Rackstraw accepted her friend request, and they started to interact, and they had several phone conversations or texting. So I finally called the guy. We were doing email and texting. I finally called the guy, and I said, I want to know what's your motivation? Why are you doing this? And turns out that he was just bored and was looking for something to do. He was married, had 3 kids. His wife had actually divorced him because of doing this kind of shit on Facebook. But they had actually gotten back together, so he didn't have a Facebook persona, a real one. So he had to do this catfishing so he could still do this shit. So, by the way, dbcooper.com, if you're interested, we have all our interviews, all our evidence is on there, the whole thing. So my ex-wife is a private investigator, so she did a background investigation on the guy, Kelly. And all the information that he had provided me was actually accurate. He was married, 3 kids, 32 years old. He had provided his real address in Alabama, and he was a pastor of a church. And so was his father. I mean, okay, amen. So he was actually able to get some pictures that we didn't have. So he started texting, and so I said, I just want you to, flatter him, but, let's keep it clean, right? Well, that lasted for a little while. So Rackstraw had provided, Kelly said her father had been stationed with Rackstraw when he was in Fort Benning. He sent this picture when he was 35, and if you can't see it, but he's a lieutenant colonel with all these medals. Well, a lieutenant colonel's up here, and a first lieutenant is down here. So he faked this photograph, many, many years ago. And he was kicked out, in 71. So lots of different interactions, but he told her that he had actually worked for CIA when he was in Vietnam. And we went back to his former commanders, and they said that he was actually doing stuff off the books with the CIA in Thailand and Cambodia, running black ops. So that was helpful. He also sent pictures of his yacht that he lives on in San Diego, invited her to come stay. If you can read the name of his boat, it's Poverty Sucks. And in the stateroom on the far right, he actually has that lieutenant colonel picture on his wall. Guy's a piece of work. So then, all of a sudden, my boy starts sending me all these texts that he's exchanging with Rackstraw, and it went from flattery to sexting very quickly. And I told him, I said, listen, I'm really not interested in the sexting. It's not real helpful to the investigation because I was talking to about 20 guys before, and they'd all say they were D.B. Cooper if they thought they were going to get laid, So So I informed him that if he didn't, I was going to terminate him and I wasn't going to communicate with him anymore. He kept up, sending me stuff, and I've terminated him as an informant. But he continues today to, so he said, here's a picture of her and a picture of him. So this, you can't get out of your mind, a picture of a 73-year-old D.B. Cooper's penis, you know? So in other briefings, I made it bigger because because of the legend, but yeah, you know, anyway. So I terminated him as source, and then 2 weeks later, we're running, remember our first op, we're still monitoring these Cooper websites. My catfisher joins the website under his real name and starts to go and have a meltdown about all the stuff and how he catfished Rackstraw. And I'm communicating with him and he's ignoring me saying, hey, you know, don't do that, you know, because he may be watching. Well, he ignored me. And so I called the sysop and the sysadmin, and I had him kicked off the board, and I had the bloggers that we thought were Rackstraw, I had them kicked off so they couldn't monitor what was going on until I got a hold of them. And the way I got a hold of him, I called his flippin' father and told his father what he was doing and said, if you don't get him to stop, I'm going to tell his wife. So that seemed to work. So, sorry about the fonts. They were okay when I started. But the boys got some real issues. Unfortunately, we couldn't conclude definitively from the cyber portion who D.B. Cooper was. But what happened was when the FBI closed the case, when they have a case open, we're asking for information. And law enforcement's not going to share any information they have in an open case. Well, once they closed the case, we said, hey, you closed the case, so we want access to the case file. And they said, no. So we said, okay. So we sued them, and we won. So we sued them in September, we won in January, and in February, we started to get 100 to 200 documents out of the case file every month, and we still get them today. So the investigation continued. FBI started releasing these documents. So we won the case in January 2017. So we had a couple press releases, and a couple had seen the History Channel documentary about the same time in a rerun. And they came forward and said, hey, we have something we want to share with you. The husband was in an aero club, he was a pilot, and his wife was a retired deputy sheriff up in Washington State. And Russ, the husband, was confided in by 3 other members of the aero club who were in their mid to late 70s at that time, that they had actually helped D.B. Cooper escape. And they had staged this area, had worked it out, had surveilled it, had a drop zone, a plane. Cooper was picked up after he jumped out of the 727, and the pilot took D.B. Cooper. They don't know Rackstraw, so two separate at this point. So the pilot picks up Cooper, $50,000 in cash, and his bomb. They take off and fly, and they dump $50,000 cash and the bomb in this huge lake. So they were hoping that people would find that and think that he was killed in the jump. Meanwhile, 2 other guys picked the parachute up in 150K, and they drove out into the wilderness and buried it. So once the guy that confided in them had passed away, they decided, the wife convinced the husband that they needed to come forward. So in 2007, they came forward to the FBI, and they blew him off. So when they saw the documentary, they saw somebody was interested, and they contacted us. So I don't know if you could see this, but this is the path. They're in red. The path in the black is the airliner. Path in the red is where he jumped out, where they dropped the 50,000 cash and a bomb and escaped. So we thought we could find where they said they had buried the parachute and the money. So we put a dig together a year ago in August. And we set a team up there, and they were up there for a week, and they literally found what we believe are parts of the straps off of a parachute. And we took those, we had a couple of retired FBI agents in the dig. They collected it as evidence. We documented it, and we gave it to the FBI, and we've heard nothing since because the case is closed. Another guy, a Vietnam veteran, Rick Sherwood, was also a member of the same Army security agency that Rackstraw had been in, and he was looking at the letters. Cooper had sent letters to afterwards, after the hijacking, to newspapers poking the FBI in the eye for not being able to catch them. Well, there were codes on the bottom of these letters, and nobody ever broke the codes. So, don't know whether they tried, but nobody broke the codes. Well, this guy spent months working on the codes and says that he broke them. So, in the 9th of February this year, we had a press conference to close the case, and of course we thought it would be appropriate to do it on the steps of the FBI. So we had a press conference there, and if you remember, one of the details was that he told our catfisher was that he did CIA operations for the National Security Agency, National Security Council. So I remember when we were talking to the lead investigator, he had told me that he had interviewed one of Rackstraw's former son-in-laws. And he told him that Rackstraw had actually flown for CIA in Iran-Contra in the 80s. Okay? So my theory is while he was in jail in 78 to 81 for first murdering his stepfather and then for the explosives and fraud, that the FBI had him as a suspect. I think they solved the case back then. And so I think in return for dropping the case, he had to fly Iran-Contra for the CIA. So I went to my intel sources, so I'm still pretty connected. And my source came back to me and said, okay, I want you to pay attention to my words. We cannot confirm. Okay? That was it. So they didn't say we cannot deny or confirm or deny. He said we cannot confirm. That's code for yeah. So our lead, Colbert, he went to his intel sources and got the same thing. So I think there are a lot of folks that avoid jail time, for Iran-Contra. Okay, it's kind of how the government operated in those days. So tomorrow, what we're going to do is we're going to have a press release how the code is broken. So if you guys are interested in this, go to dbcooper.com tomorrow, and you will be able to, and if there's members of the press, I have a pre-press release, and if you promise to hold the story until tomorrow, we'll give you the story today, okay? So, and if you're interested in this case, in 2016, Colbert wrote this award-winning book on the last master outlaw. And this is, it's in depth how, him growing up, interviews with his sisters, all his former, it's a really good book. You can get it off dbcooper.com as well. So, probably the most bizarre, complex, and I'm only touching the surface. You should really go to the website and see the interviews, see the newspaper articles, see our documentation. It's really overwhelming. I think you'll be convinced as well that Robert Rackstraw is D.B. Cooper. I write several blogs periodically for Symmetria, so I've written a couple on Cooper and stuff like that, so if you're interested, you can go to symmetria.com, and boy, this has just screwed everything up. So anyway, holy shit. So what we're going to do is, if there's any questions, what we're going to do is we're going into breaking ground afterwards, and I'll try to keep everybody on schedule. And so I'll answer your questions until you don't have any more. And I keep going, but this thing is locked up again. So thanks.
Everybody, one more round for Mr. Christie. Thank you, Jim Christie. Any Canadians here? Thank you, Mr. Christie. You make good cookies. All right, moving on. But it's so amazing or mind-boggling to know that somebody who's done so much for digital forensics can be kind of taken out by a cloud and a Chromebook. Makes me wonder if we break the Chromebook in half and we tape it back together, if we can put it through the drive, it'll work. Right now we've got Jack Daniel coming up. He is one of the founders of BSidesLV. We will be having our 10-year anniversary next year. We hope that everybody can come down and check that out. This man needs no introduction. If you've ever been able to have a drink with him or just relax and have a good conversation, he's a sage, he's a listener, a creative, a thinker, and just an all-around top dresser. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jack Daniel. Which one do you want? Oh, you got it? This guy.
Let's see. Mic on a stand. They're trying to keep me in one place. Sorry, cameraman. I don't do that well. Hey, I'm Jack. I'm not going to take a lot of time. I just want to say a few things about B-Sides. Come on. We can do it. We'll skip that part. Here's the important thing. You are here. I'd like you to notice how many other B-Sides have happened globally. This is the 10th event in end of July. Okay. End of July 2009, a handful of us kind of made this thing happen, and about 175, 200 of you came. And we didn't think we were doing anything other than giving a voice to some folks and having a little fun. This is the 10th one of these. This is the 433rd B-Sides globally in the past 9 years. Where are we? 90 plus, almost 100 cities, 21 countries. I'm currently having conversations with people doing ones in Beijing, Istanbul, Dubai, I forget where else, all across the US and Europe. It's amazing. A couple of these are based on my memory, which is not always good. So here we go, a little look back. This was the first year, there might be a couple of you remember this, the room we were in wasn't air conditioned, so we were duct taping garbage bags to the windows to make it work, and we had a portable air conditioning units, and then we had just the most amazing conference. Oh, and we nearly burned the house down. It turns out that if you plug in a portable AC unit, you shouldn't have, oh, come back to me. Technology. Anyway, come on, you can do it. You can do it. You know those days when your love of technology is unrequited? Let's try this one more time, and then I'm just going to give up on slides. Who needs slides? So anyway, we nearly burned the house down. I wasn't supposed to talk about that anymore, but whatever. But how did we get here? I want to talk about the Founders Circle. I don't want to make fun of any conferences that do this, but we've grown dramatically, and like any growing organization or building, you need a growing foundation. So unlike some other events and conferences, whether this is your first event or 80th event, welcome to the Founders Circle. You're part of what makes B-Sides what it is. How does that work? Strangers become friends who became family, and that's what built this amazing thing. My PowerPoint heckles me, so creepy uncles. I think this sums it up. So the audio, for those of you who know that clip, they told two friends and they told two friends. Anyway, so what does it take to make this happen? It doesn't take that. What it takes is Jack to give up on this stupid slide deck, that's all. So what it takes is an incredible team of staff that make this event happen. Most of the staff works at least 10 months of a year. A lot of us work 12 months of the year. We have volunteers. It takes hundreds of people to make this happen. But it's not just us. It's everybody who comes to speak or run a workshop or run the Capture the Flag or man the villages. It takes everybody that participates and shares what they know, because that's what this is about. It takes the sponsors who support this, make this happen, engage with our community, give you jobs and hire you. We have the hiring ground going. It takes all of the volunteers who come in for a day or two or 4 or 5. And it takes you, the participants. You'll notice that doesn't say attendees. There are no attendees here. Everyone participates. And that's what makes it special. What it takes to make B-Sides happen is you. Participants, not attendees. We have sponsors, not vendors. We are a 501c3. The IRS has rules about that, but I think it means a lot to tell people that you're sponsoring this. You're making this happen. And as we've looked through what has made B-Sides magical, the 4 things that we came up with, the first 3 were content, sharing interesting content, having good conversations about that content. And if you do those 2 things, it starts to build and strengthen your communities. And if you do those 3 things, it turns out that it has a profound impact on people's careers. It's worth, if you are new to this or haven't seen this, a few years ago we collected a bunch of recollections of what B-Sides means to various people. It means a lot to a lot of us. A lot of people have given their first talk at a conference here. A lot of people have gotten jobs here. There are people that I lose on my staff because they got their dream job here. People have made friends here. People have leaned on each other through rough times because, by the way, we're all humans, so work isn't all we do. When we talk about the family here, there's some of us who are truly closer than we are with our biological families. And so there's something that you can all do here this week. Do it today and tomorrow at B-Sides, but there's other things happening in town. You can do it there. What you need to do, anybody here their first B-Sides event? Yeah, I love that. Now, I'm going to pick on somebody and hope she does blush. Come here, come here. You're going to make a new friend, and you're going to talk and see if you can help their career or they can help yours. This is my friend Sarah. We met through Twitter trying to help her with a thing.
Hello.
Make a friend. Even if you're just barely into your career, you can help somebody come up behind you, and maybe you make a buddy who can move you a little bit further forward. So, hey, I'm glad. We've been chatting online since last fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're finally meeting in person here, and she's part of the NOC team and making this event happen. Her first event, she's in an orange shirt making this happen. Make buddies, advance the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's the most important thing you can do. There's a lot to learn, a lot to share. I want to say happy birthday to I Am the Cavalry. That was born here 5 years ago. They're kind of making a difference in things. And that was, we gave them a launch pad. We don't get much credit, but we get a little bit of credit for it. I believe we were called hacker midwives. That's kind of an interesting phrase. I'm not sure I'm going to put that on my bio, but that was a pretty good thing. And with that, I'm actually going to do this very quick. This is not the end. This is the beginning. I'm going to leave you with a video of the first 5 or 6 events that happened, and let the AV team. I can't do the video. It's not going to work. Never mind. No, I'm going to try it. We're going to try technology one more time. Thank God the internet's a passing fad, because I'm really tired of this. I also have that as a tattoo. Don't worry, there's no story behind a heart with tentacles flailing out of it. Give this very quick, and then we'll let AV work. Play. Oh, nice. The audio doesn't want to play. If only there were people that understood technology here to help me. Anyway, I'm going to leave it with this running. Some of these photos may be interesting to some of you. It's my laptop. It's got to be. It's one of my audio cards. Should we try this one more time? Oh, it's pushing out the VGA. I hate the internet. Oh well. Oh well. Hey, rather than waste any more time, I just wanted to say welcome to B-Sides, whether it's your first event or 60th or 70th. There are all sorts of people in orange shirts who make this happen. There are people in purple shirts who make it happen. There are people in red shirts who make it happen. If you are uncomfortable about anything, need guidance, find one of the folks with one of those colored shirts. They'll steer you to things. With that, let's get rolling, and thank you all very much.